and I'm going to ask Lynda to come up and talk to us about pollutant source pollution in the Buffalo region and what her research has found.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to begin by saying I really appreciate Diane's work in the science. My work has been much more in the environmental sector and advocacy, and I'm going to be speaking from that perspective about, thank you, Senator. I'm sure we'll be in touch. Because one of the things that's really, really important to know is that we can't fix the pollution. You can't go out and take all of those PCBs and everything back out of the environment again. The only way to do this is to not put it in the first place. And so when somebody says, what do we do? I say, organize, get political. It's the only way that you and I are going to live in an environment that is going to be free of this stuff. And when someone says, well, the environmentalists are trying to kill the economy or trying to, kill industry, I'm saying, no, no, no. I just want them to stop killing us. Thank you very much. So one of the principles I think that we should all be thinking about is what's called the precautionary principle. And it's the opposite of the way that we do our policy in New York and in the United States. The precautionary principle says that you have to prove that it's safe before we allow it in the environment. The way that it works right now is exactly the opposite, is that we have to prove that it's dangerous. And we were just talking about the cumulative impacts where one chemistry or one chemical or one drug or something at a time we're looking at, there's no way that we can keep up with that. No way that you and I or Diane's research can actually do that. So we have to turn this around to the fact to say, no, you have to prove that it's safe before it goes out in the environment versus the reverse of it. But one of the things that we need before we start doing all of this is, let's go back to the first one, okay? Is information. You need to know what's going on. Somebody was talking about a certain zip code. We need to know what actually is happening here. So what I'm going to talk about briefly today is a study, it's right here, another study. It's called Mapping Waste, which is setting the stage to clean up Niagara. And if this was done by the Waste and Pollution Working Group of the Western New York Environmental Alliance. One of the things, if you live in Western New York, let me encourage you to get involved in the Western New York Environmental Alliance. There's a lot of different groups working on a lot of different areas. Environmental justice is one of them. Waste and pollution is another. And this is an opportunity to sit down with people who are worried about the same issues that you're worried about and finding out and sharing information. So this study was done by Joe Gardella and myself at the University of Buffalo. And what our goals were was just to map the hazardous waste in Western New York. I mean, what is out there? And secondly, to make it available to everybody. And this is online, and you can have access to it. Our long-term goal is to say, how do we clean up this area? We have a huge legacy of waste in Western New York. And the question is, how are we going to begin to do this? So this is just the beginning. And so let's look at the next slide. What we did was we looked at 3 counties. We looked at Niagara County, Erie County, and Cattaraugus County. So this is just the beginning. There's many, many more areas in Western New York that we could be looking at. Next. What we looked at was 2 different things. One is legacy waste, which is an active waste. The woman in the table back there was talking about there used to be industry here, what is here now, and ongoing waste, because there's an enormous amount of waste still being produced because of the lifestyle that we live. When you think about it, I don't know, Diane, you maybe have a number that's how many chemicals have been invented since World War II. It's like, things that don't occur. I mean, mercury occurs naturally in the environment, but so many of these things that we have are created by us at that time. So we looked at the active and inactive hazardous waste sites, solid waste. We looked at water pollution, air pollution, resource extraction, radioactive waste, and unfortunately we are heir to quite a bit of radioactive waste in our region, and defense-related sites. We looked at it through the regulatory structure. So we said, for example, EPA and DEC are the 2 bodies that actually try to keep us safe. That's what their job is, right? part of their job. The other part of their job is to permit pollution. So don't forget that they have a totally contradictory mission. One is, I said, to protect us, and the other one is to permit it. So, can you go back one second? So DEC has, that's our Department of Environmental Conservation, has a whole set of programs that they have, and the National Environmental Protection Agency has a whole bunch of things within the legacy waste. Next. And they have these classes, this always is just really charming. They have these enormously complex definitions of everything. So if you look it up, I'm sure it's done so that we don't understand what's going on, right? I'm not a chemist like Diane, so I have to try to figure this out. The thing is that, so they have this inactive hazardous waste category system. One is, oh, it's an absolute public health threat. They never had a number one, although we know there's public hazardous things. So we can just wipe that one off. Number two is the one that we have to be worried about. Number two says that this is a threat to health and to wildlife. Number three, which is ironic, says, oh, we looked at one of these that somebody said, it turned out that it's not bad, so number three is not a bad category. All right. Number four, however, is one where they have gone through and they've looked at it, they've cleaned it up, which usually means they've contained it. So when you think about Love Canal, 200 tons of toxic waste is still in Love Canal. And if you read the paper yesterday, there are residents who are coming back and saying that children of the children are having birth defects and endocrine disruption or disorders, et cetera, happening right now from our own Love Canal. And number five means it's cleaned up. So these two are the ones that we're worried about. Next, okay. And so here's the one that we have in these three counties. And if you look at this map, and that's what this book is filled with maps, and then has lists of things along with it that says, this is where these things are located. And if you'll see, they're concentrated in the urban areas because that's where industry used to be, right? And so these are the areas that are here right now. And this is how many Class 2 sites that we have, and you can see there are a series of Class 4 sites as well. Next. And we looked at them more closely in the urban areas, as we said, because there are a higher incidence in urban areas. So you're starting to see that, sorry, the lighting is bad, but the dark ones are saying that those are Class 2 that are still being remediated. Watch that language, remediation, because it doesn't necessarily mean clean up. It means that somebody's just looking at it. Next. But the thing that struck me when I started to do this study was how much active waste, how much we're still producing, how much we're still storing, how much is still on our highways traveling around that could have an accident any time. And so EPA has a program, RCRA, they speak in numbers and letters, right? So that's the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, which means that it's their job to keep track of the new waste that's being produced. Now, that is mostly a permitting program, which means that they keep track of it, but they're not doing anything necessarily to change it. Their job is just to know what's going on. There's the transfer, storage, and delivery areas, the things that are disposal areas that are moving around, large quantity generators, and then the corrective action, I won't go into that. And then DEC actually keeps track of this stuff for EPA. So let's look at the map of this one and start to look at, these are areas that are not necessarily the physical storage, but these are the toxic release things. So somebody mentioned, you mentioned earlier about the TRIS. This is a really important thing for you to know about. You can go online and EPA TRIS, Toxic Release Inventory System, put your zip code in, and you can find out all of the things that are being released in your zip code. Because you can go on and they'll have the name of the business. Now, when somebody starts to write those chemical names for me, I don't know what they mean, but I'll know that at least now that some of this stuff is going on in my own district. And this is a very important thing for you to do, just as a preliminary and as a background. And those are listed in this report as well. Next. Another listing of what's currently being polluted is our state pollutant discharge elimination system. When Senator Grisanti was talking about combined store overflows, that the city of Buffalo is permitted to be able to release so much contamination into the water every year. So all of these sites here are sites where we are permitted to actually pollute the water. This is, and we might say, well, how do we get around that? Well, stopping producing stuff is a good one, but human waste is human waste. We're not going to stop pooping, as my granddaughter would say. So, it means that we have to be able to take care of some of this stuff. But actually, the biological stuff is the easiest stuff to take care of. It's the chemical stuff that Diane was talking about that's really, really hard. And resource extraction. I refrained from mentioning hydrofracking in front of Senator Brasante, but one of the big problems that we have in the state of New York right now is the proposed hydrofracking. You can go next. And if you look at it, this is existing. This is prior to any kind of deep well horizontal hydrofracking. This is existing wells in these 3 counties, 12,405. DEC has 4 people that trying to keep track of all of this stuff. So that we might say, for example, oh, this is okay, we know this stuff. And I've also said that there's been a lot of studies that show this is really only a beginning. We don't even know where all of these sites are right now. And although deep well horizontal hydrofracking is not allowed in the state of New York right now, they are re-fracking or what they call stimulating the old vertical wells. And there are people now who live in the South Town whose water is contaminated with these 600 chemicals that we talked about. Okay, next. And then we also have some serious problems. So I don't know whether you know that Niagara was actually the center of the Manhattan Project in the very early days, long before we had any kind of regulation about nuclear stuff. So we have a lot of heritage from the Manhattan Project. We have the Niagara Falls storage area. We have the West Valley. So we have serious contamination issues in terms of radioactivity that needs to be taken care of. Can we go next? What we did in this report as well was a series of case studies. So I think one of the things that's interesting in example, and Rebecca's going to talk about the Clean Air Coalition, which is one of the projects that we've had here, which is actually one of the most positive ones, as well as the Ferry Street, which, where'd you go, Derek? Derek was involved in. So there are times when citizens get together and really make a difference, and that this is an important concept. Next. What we found was that environmental justice is a serious issue. When we look at these things, we'll say Superfund sites and population density. These Superfund sites are where we all live. These are not out in the middle of nowhere. Next. This is just the city of Buffalo. Superfund sites within a half a mile of a public school. I mean, kids might be walking by them every day. Next. And then the question we asked was whether or not Western New York has more than its fair share. Well, let's look at New York State, across New York State. Are we more heavily toxified than the rest of the state? And the answer is yes, we actually are. We have more Superfund sites. Erie County is 2nd in the state, and Niagara County is 4th in the state in terms of how many Superfund sites that we have. Next. And then the other question is, like, do we have these current sites? This is the ones I was talking about before, about current active sites. Niagara County is 2nd, Erie County is 3rd. All right, we are way up there at the top. Next, please. And in terms of waste disposal, we're off the chart, because we have the only hazardous waste center it sorts in the Northeast, which is the CWN. And they want to expand, and there's a lot of people organizing to say, no, stop producing this stuff. Let's not put it buried any longer. Next. And that we have, of the 8 radioactive sites that need to be remediated, we have 2 of them here in our county. So one might say that Western New York is actually overburdened. Next. As I said, environmental justice issues, we're threatened. We are actually have a disproportionate share. Next. And the other thing I think we learned when we did this, which is that the whole regulation system is an evolving system, and so the regulations change over time. So what wasn't counted before is counted now, or they changed the name of something that used to be toxic and it's been changed and is not toxic anymore. You went, how can you do that? How can you just name something and change it? So we actually, my issue when I talk about what we can do, I just say organize. You know, if you think that your neighborhood is having a problem, or if you know something else, this is not something that you as an individual can solve. And when people talk about, oh, we want less taxes, I keep saying, well, you're going to take care of that toxic waste down the street? You know we don't even have enough money to clean up these places right now because we refuse to dedicate it. We don't have to live this way. We can demand that things be cleaned up. And so I'm encouraging all of you to be out there and be outrageous and just say, we're not putting up with this. We're going to stop it.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right.